So Pocahontas speaking in front of a Native American group today, sending some serious smoke signals from her wigwam about her future presidential run. That is not me mocking Native Americans, by the way. That is me mocking Elizabeth Warren's pretensions to be a Native American. She used that nonsense to essentially become a professor at Harvard Law School, apparently. And now she's trying to use this Native American group as a shield in order to shield herself from accusations that she's a liar about that Native American heritage. We'll get to all of those things. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Birch Gold. So, in times of great uncertainty, look at the stock market right now. You see how volatile the stock market is? That's because sometimes the stock market gets volatile, and that's why you should have some of your assets in precious metals. That is what Birch Gold is there for. They have a long-standing track record of continued success, thousands of satisfied clients, countless five-star reviews, and A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. And you can contact Birch Gold Group right now to request a free information kit on physical precious metals. It's a comprehensive 16-page kit, and it shows you how gold and silver can protect your savings, how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of stocks and bonds into a precious metals IRA if you choose to do so. Get that no-cost, no-obligation kit right now at birchgold.com/Ben. That's birchgold.com/Ben. Again, these are the folks that I would trust. There's a reason why so many people trust them with their precious metals investment. Ask all your questions. Make sure that you're comfortable with investing in precious metals. And then when you're ready, talk to my friends over at birchgold.com/Ben. That is birchgold.com/Ben. That /Ben lets them know that we sent you. Alrighty, so I do want to get to all of the issues in domestic politics. A shocking new poll that shows Republicans now up in the generic ballot, like actually up in the generic ballot, that's making a lot of headlines. Elizabeth Warren obviously making headlines. But I want to start today with a story that people are overlooking, and that is we may have like a full-scale war in the Middle East. Another one in the very near future. See, when we decided that we were going to get rid of ISIS, that was a very good thing, but there's been nothing to fill the gap. And so what you're ending up with now is essentially 6 separate countries who are now involving themselves in a Syrian war. So you've got Iran that's involved in Syria. You've got Israel that's in response involved in Syria. You've got the Syrian government involved in Syria. You've got Russia involved in Syria. You've got Turkey involved in Syria. So it's a lot of countries involved in a very small space, all of them fighting for a certain level of supremacy. Of course, the United States is involved there as well. And all of this internecine warfare, it could have serious external effects. So if you missed it, over the last week, there was a major issue in which an Israeli plane was shot down. We talked about this. An Israeli plane was shot down after Israel shot down a drone from Syria. It was an Iranian-made drone. And Israel shot that down. Israel flew an F-16 over Syrian airspace. That was shot down by a Syrian anti-aircraft missile. And then Israel said, hey, you're going to shoot down our planes? Here's what we're going to do to you. And they legitimately proceeded to destroy half of the Syrian Air Force while it was on the ground. Because don't screw with the Israeli military, I think is the main message there. They went in an air raid, and they destroyed half the Syrian Air Force on the ground. One of the things this makes clear, by the way, is just how much of a lie it was. When Barack Obama said there was nothing we could do in Syria to stop, for example, the gassing of citizens of that country, Israel, in legitimately an hour, destroyed half the Syrian Air Force, half of it. Okay, if the United States had wanted to, under President Obama, after the original Bashar Assad chemical attack, we could have grounded his entire Air Force nearly immediately. But that's not the extent of the conflict. At that point, the Syrians basically backed off of Israel and said, okay, we're not interested in doing this right now. But that's really a proxy war, Syria, between Israel and Iran, because Iran is funneling supplies to Hezbollah, a terrorist group in Lebanon, through Syria, and they're moving all of those supplies directly through areas that Israel has been hitting. Meanwhile, there's the Syrian proxy war heating up between the United States and Russia. So on Tuesday, Bloomberg News reported that U.S. and Kurdish forces in Syria had killed 200 fighters, including a bunch of Russians. So Russia has a bunch of contract mercenary soldiers on the ground over there. And the Russians were fighting on the side of the embattled leader, Bashar al-Assad. They attacked a military base in the Deir ez-Zor region of Syria on February 7th. Now, there is no congressional authorization for American forces to be in Syria. Okay, this is why we actually need, as Rand Paul says, we need congressional authorization. If we're going to be there, then we ought to have Congress authorize it. The American people ought to be clear about what exactly our goals are there. Is it to solidify? Is it to preserve the status quo? Why exactly we're there? Why are men and women in harm's way? Why are we spending our cash there? The Russians, however, actually attacked a U.S.-run base, essentially. There's a U.S. force stationed with Syrian Democratic Force troops on a base, and those troops responded with artillery fire and airstrikes, and 200 to 300 Russians were apparently killed in that assault. Many of them were taken back to Moscow and treated. Now, the Russians are denying that Russian forces were involved in the attack, which at least is, for the moment, is a good thing, right? That's a good thing. because if the Russians were interested in some sort of open conflict in Syria, they would be claiming that America had attacked Russian soldiers, but they want to pretend they're not there in the first place, so this remains sort of a covert fight. However, Major Adrian Rankin Galloway is a spokesperson for the U.S. Department of Defense. He said officials believed roughly 100 people were killed in the raid, though he said he couldn't speculate about their nationality. Bloomberg reported the number dead was closer to 200. The New York Times said dozens of Russians were believed to be killed. CIA Director Mike Pompeo, this is according to Vox.com, also refused to confirm specifics when asked whether the U.S. was responsible for killing Russian contract soldiers in Syria during a hearing on Tuesday. He said, "We have seen in multiple instances foreign forces using mercenaries in battles that will begin to approach the United States." So, again, in the last week, we've seen Israel take out half of the Syrian Air Force, and we've seen the United States kill something like 100 Russian fighters, apparently. So all of this is heating up in rather rapid fashion. And meanwhile, on the domestic political scene in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu may be in some trouble. The prime minister of Israel has now been indicted on a couple of counts of bribery. One of those counts essentially suggests that he was accepting gifts from wealthy benefactors in return for advancing their interests. There's another case that suggests that he was trying to strike a deal that would have given him positive coverage in Yediot Aharonot, which is one of the major newspapers in Israel, in exchange for hurting Israel Hayom, which is the free rival to Yediot Aharonot. That one I find a little more suspicious, since the fact is that Israel Hayom is very pro-Netanyahu in the first place, and it is funded by Sheldon Adelson, who's an ally of Bibi's politically. According to the police, in Case 1000, Netanyahu received champagne, cigars, jewelry, and clothing by demand and systematically valued at about 1 million shekels, which is about 280 grand in American dollars. The gifts he received from the Israeli-American Hollywood producer Arnon Milchan increased significantly once Netanyahu was elected prime minister. So there is a case to be made against him in the media case. One of the problems in that case is that one of the people testifying against him is a political rival who is a former news guy, Yair Lapid. He is now in the opposition. He was Netanyahu's finance minister in the past, and he has been testifying against Netanyahu. Bottom line is that in order for Netanyahu to step down, he's probably going to have to be convicted. Unclear whether he actually would be convicted in these cases. And right now, with Israel under fire, it's pretty unlikely that Netanyahu is going to step down in the middle of all this. So what we're seeing right now, in other words, is chaos across the region. And the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Israelis are all working hand in hand in order to try and stop the impact of Iranian influence in the region. Meanwhile, Turkey is trying to flex its muscles in places like Syria as well as Kurdistan. It is shocking how the West has abdicated its responsibility. And part of that, a huge percentage of that, most of that, is on the Obama administration, which went out of its way to embolden Iran, which went out of its way not to do anything with Bashar Assad, which went out of its way to let ISIS run roughshod throughout the Middle East, at least until its latter days. The Trump administration has said a lot of the right things on the Middle East, but they're not actually doing a lot on the Middle East. So whenever there's an uprising in Iran, for example, we say a lot of stuff, but it's not clear that we're actually doing much of anything. In Syria right now, we're doing a few things, but not enough that we're actually seriously involved, and too much to say that we're not involved at all. At a certain point, we're going to have to take a harder position on what exactly we want to see happen in Syria, because otherwise the chances of escalation here are increasingly likely. It's increasingly likely that this will end up spiraling out of control. Israel will hit the Syrians will hit Israel, Iran will be drawn in, Israel will go to war with Iran. A regional war like that would look a lot like World War III, because Russia then might be drawn in on one side with the United States on the other. All of that would be due to the abomination of foreign policy that was the Obama administration. But if the United States doesn't take some pretty clear active measures right now, then this thing could escalate out of control pretty quickly, and we would be dragged into a situation that we really do not want to be involved in the first place. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about domestic politics in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Skillshare. So Skillshare is the best way for you to increase your resume, to make your resume that much better, right? It's a new year. You want to make sure that you are able to move up in the world. Well, the best way to do that is by increasing your skill set, and that's what Skillshare is for, right? Skillshare is an online learning platform, over 18,000 classes in design, business, technology, and more. You can take classes in graphic design, social media marketing, illustration, mobile photography, you name it, they've got it. So whether you're trying to deepen your professional skill set, start a side business, or explore a new passion, Skillshare is there for you. I've been taking the social media marketing classes. I know folks in this office have taken graphic design classes. I took a watercolors class, which relaxes me in the evening time. Skillshare just has a ton of these courses that are available for you. So you're a lifelong learner. That's why you listen to this show. Skillshare makes that easy, and they make it affordable as well. Join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today. We have a special offer just for my listeners. Get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents. Skillshare is offering my listeners 2 months of unlimited access to 18,000 classes for just 99 cents. To sign up, go to Skillshare.com/Shapiro. Again, Skillshare.com/Shapiro. Use that /Shapiro so that you get that deal. Right? Again, you'll get 2 months of Skillshare for just 99 cents, which is a fantastic deal. You can see if you like it. Skillshare.com/Shapiro. Start that 2 months right now. Skillshare.com/Shapiro. Let them know that we sent you as well. Okay, meanwhile, on the domestic political scene, Elizabeth Warren apparently is now speaking out about how she is a Native American. So she's speaking to the Native American Native Indian Conference of some such or other. I'm not sure what exactly. It was the National Congress of American Indians. That's what it was. She made a surprise appearance at the National Congress of American Indians. And apparently she was incredibly great. I mean, she was just full-on regalia. She showed up with the headdress. She showed up with the smoke and peace pipe, the whole deal. And again, whenever I say things like this, it's not because I'm mocking Native American culture. It's because I'm mocking Elizabeth Warren for appropriating Native American heritage. Okay, so here's what she said to the Native American conference. Quote, "By all accounts, my mother was a beauty." I know Elizabeth Warren, by the way, and she is one of the more obnoxious humans on planet Earth. "By all accounts, my mother was a beauty. She was born in eastern Oklahoma on this exact day, Valentine's Day, in February 14th, 1912. She grew up in the little town of Wetumpka, the kind of girl who would sit for hours by herself playing the piano and singing. My daddy fell head over heels in love with her. But my mother's family was part Native American, and my daddy's parents were bitterly opposed to their relationship. So, in 1932, when my mother was 19 and daddy had just turned 20, they eloped." Okay, so she doesn't provide any evidence, by the way, that she is of Native American heritage at all. Like none, like zero evidence. And then she says, this is my favorite line, "I get why some people think there's hay to be made here. You won't find my family members on any rolls, and I'm not enrolled in a tribe." Right? So she's openly admitting that she's not enrolled in a tribe, that you won't be able to find any of her family members on the Native American rolls. Remember, the record keeping for Native American heritage is extremely good. Right? It is very in-depth, which is why you can have situations where legitimately the government will come and take somebody who's a quarter Native American out of their foster home and bring them back to a reservation because of how good the rolls are. Right? But this is the best part. She says, quote, "Our stories are deeply woven into the fabric of who we are. The stories of immigrants and slaves, of explorers and refugees, have shaped and reshaped our country right up to the present day. For far too long, your story has been pushed aside to be trotted out only in cartoons and commercials. So I'm here today to make a promise. Each time someone brings up my family's story, I'm going to use it to lift up the story of your families and your communities." And that last line there, as Alex Griswold says at Free Beacon, right, that is called using the Native American community as your political human shield. Right? Every time someone calls her Pocahontas, every time President Trump botches it and calls her Pocahontas, every time that happens, she's simply going to shift it and say, Native Americans are so important. Native American heritage is so important. Never mind the fact that we call her Pocahontas because she's been lying about her Native American heritage. I mean, she's as Native American as Sean King is black, apparently. Okay, the idea that Sean King, by the way, his father was white, his mother was white on the birth certificate. He says that his mom had an affair. There's no evidence that any of this is true. The same thing is true of Elizabeth Warren. She suggests that she is Native American. There is no evidence that at all that Elizabeth Warren is Native American. How much of a joke is her Native American heritage? It's such a joke that Elizabeth Warren used as evidence of her Native American heritage the fact that she had submitted a recipe to a cookbook called, I kid you not, Pow Wow Chow. That was the name of the cookbook. And the recipe that she actually submitted was a recipe for crab bisque. Okay, which it turns out she actually copied from a copy of Good Housekeeping or something. It turns out that crab bisque is not actually a Native American heritage thing because crabs are not wandering across the fruited plains of Oklahoma, which is where she is from. So she's a joke. But this is what Democrats are going to do. They're going to do the intersectionality pyramid all the way to the bottom, which is just insane. And so they're struggling. Right? Democrats are struggling right now. There's a poll out right now, shocking poll from the Politico Morning Consult survey, right? This is not a survey that is biased toward Republicans. And it shows generic polls right now among registered voters. 39% said they would back the GOP candidate in their district. 38% said they would support a Democrat. 23% are undecided. So Democrats still have a pretty solid advantage across a variety of polls, according to CNBC. An average of recent generic ballots shows Democrats with about a 7-point lead, according to Real Clear Politics. But that was 13 points at the end of last year. So they've fallen at least 6 points. And there are a couple of outlier polls now that show that the Republicans are actually in the lead or even. And so that is a big piece of news. Also, the Politico Consult poll, Morning Consult poll, it shows a 47% approval rating for President Trump. That's about as good as it's going to get for Trump. Trump's never going to break 50. But 47% is a very solid approval rating for President Trump. So despite the attempts to beat him down over the Rob Porter situation or the bleep whole country's remark, it's as I said, everything is baked into the cake except the evidence of how the economy is doing. That is not baked into the cake. all of the character stuff is baked into the cake